One. Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on Calgary's Business, brought to you today by DMA Global, your trusted relationship partner in recruiting. Joining me today is Jennifer Hunt, who is Vice President of Research with the Real Estate Investment Network. Thanks for joining us today, Jennifer.
Well, thank you, Mario. Appreciate it.
Okay, so lots of stuff in the news these days on the coronavirus. Tell me what you guys think the impact of the situation is going to have on the real estate market in Canada.
Well, I think the big question that people are wondering is if, aside from, of course, the transmission of the actual disease and things like that, the actual impact on real estate is whether it's going to be a catastrophe or a buying opportunity. And REIN has just produced a fairly comprehensive research report on the coronavirus and the impact on real estate. And there's quite an interesting observation that the data points to when you look into it. So we look at REIN's long-term real estate success formula, which is basically we look at economic fundamentals, those in terms of GDP, jobs, and population. And then those drive the rental market, and that drives the housing market. And we look at the data, and what's forecasted is GDP is actually expected, based on SARS and based on current predictions, is expected to be impacted by about, this is Canadian GDP, by a negative 0.1%. Now, estimated growth for Canada GDP for 2020 is 3.4%. So if we take 3.4% minus the potential impact of the coronavirus on GDP, we're still looking at a growth rate of 3.3%. Now that means that the long-term impacts there are quite strong from what's going to happen from the housing market, from the property market. But what's really interesting to consider right now is more the emotional side of it, Mario. And that really does impact as well. We call it a market influencer. And right now, of course, we're going to see a small temporary slowdown. And then because the GDP is barely going to be affected, there will then, once sort of the dust settles and things like that, we're already noticing that the daily cases reported by WHO are dropping in terms of percentages of reporting. And what we're seeing is that we're going to have most likely a high increase in foreign capital, immigration, and demand once the dust settles. And we saw that actually occur with the SARS event as well. And Chinese capital, for example, it was over 2,000% increase into Canada. So it's quite likely that down the road, there's going to be a very significant increase in demand for Canadian real estate.
So now is the time to buy?
Now could be the right time to buy in the right location, absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned the foreign capital. Now, are we, when we talk about that, is the impact greater in the Vancouver market than elsewhere? And I guess, will it have impact elsewhere outside of Vancouver, I guess?
Yeah, well, with REIN, we look at immigration and net migration for some of the key locations across Canada. So we look at our top 10 towns primarily in Ontario, Alberta, and BC. And I was actually just looking at data this morning showing sort of the most recent CMAs, and it was in terms of population growth and forecasts. And I was actually surprised to see that Calgary and Edmonton were actually in that top 10. Yeah. So in terms of growth. So as a result of that, definitely there will be some impact in Alberta. Also, in terms of immigration, we do typically see a higher percentage of immigrants into Canada going to Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, but they do still come to Calgary and Edmonton as well.
Okay, so wild card in all this, what happens if this gets out of control?
Well, that's the $1 million question, Mario, for sure. And one would say, in my view, that it's just, make sure that you're staying safe and that you're washing your hands and you're taking care of your health. And at the same time, look into the data, get your information from credible sources. Do you remember Y2K, Mario?
Oh, yeah.
and the Mayan calendar 2013.
That's true, yeah.
So there, and I don't mean to make light of it, but there are so many sensational, headlines. And of course, I know, Mario, your journalism is exceptional, and you report and you dig in and you ask the right questions. And I would just really encourage people out there to get their information from those credible sources.
Okay, don't panic.
Don't panic.
Okay, super. Thanks for joining us today, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Mario. Much appreciated.
That was Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on Calgary's Business, brought to you today by DMA Global, your trusted relationship partner in recruiting.